Misha Green, the first season of your show Underground was critically acclaimed and very well received by audiences. Going into season two, was there a feeling between you and Joe Pekowski, your co-creator, of, boy, I hope we don't screw this up?
No, we wrote a 55-page Bible from the start before we even pitched it. So we kind of knew and were super excited about where we wanted to go in season two, and this idea of integrating these historical characters like Harriet Tubman, like William Still even more, Frederick Douglass into season two and our fictional characters. We were just excited about that.
We'll talk a little bit more about some of the major changes. You mentioned these historical figures that are coming into season two. What were some other significant story changes that you guys had planned out for this season?
Well, I think in season one, we had that drive of them escaping 600 miles, and that really kept pushing the story forward and forward. And this season, we talked a lot about kind of digging deeper with our characters. We talked a lot about, Joe and I love The Leftovers, and we love how they just can sit with characters for a whole episode and follow them. And we talked about doing that this season, and we were excited about that. And that, led to our departure episodes where Cato's in London. It led to episode 3, which was Ache, which was just Ernestine and Rosalie. So that kind of stuff was the difference we talked about in really exploring this idea of citizen versus soldier this season.
Talk a little bit more about that, citizen versus soldier. What do you mean by that?
Well, we think, it's that question of you run 600 miles to get to freedom. They tell you it's crossing a line. You cross that line and then you're there. And you realize being free in the North isn't so free, and that this country at the time was having so much upheaval and so much. Do you get to just run and then be free in the North and call it a day? Do you get to be a citizen, or do you have to be a soldier in this fight to stop what was going on?
One of the brilliant things about this show is the way that you come from a background, and so does Joe Pekowski, a background of genre TV, genre storytelling, and you're able to integrate that into this material so that it's kind of like an adventure story in some senses. And you always have these major reveals at the end of most every episode. Can you talk a bit about applying that kind of storytelling to this kind of material?
Yeah, well, Joe and I met on Heroes. We're huge genre fans. And we knew, we talked about how do we approach the Underground Railroad as a thriller, as a heist movie, as all those things. And once we started doing research, we found we won't really have to make it up. We're not pushing it to go anywhere. All of these stories, like all the stories we were reading, we're like, this is insane. Like, these people actually did this stuff. This is a heist movie in which the thing you're stealing is the most important thing ever, your own life. And so it's not that far, like those parallels of genre to tell the story. And that's how we love it. And we love surprises. We love to be surprised. We sit in rooms when we're breaking in the writer's room and we go back and forth. We're like, oh my God, that's amazing. But it was totally the only way it could have went.
Right. Integrating the historical characters into this show, what kind of research did you do beforehand for, say, like Harriet Tubman, who plays a major role in this season?
We did all the research, all of like every Harriet Tubman book you could read, we were reading it, and it's just that. It's just trying to find, we talked a lot too with Harriet Tubman of how do you find the woman behind the myth. And the more we read, the more mythical the woman became. And we're like, oh, like, it's just crazy to think about Harriet Tubman, who we've kind of just seen as this icon, was a real life superhero. And to really spend time with the long form of television as opposed to the 2 hours of a movie, you get to really sit with her and go on all the ups and downs of what it really means to be a real superhero.
And then you give her an episode, episode 6, entitled Minty. I wanted to talk about that because it's such a unique episode in its structure and its style. Talk a little bit about that episode, where the idea for that came from.
Well, we knew, last season with Cradle, episode 7, we did a whole episode from the children's perspective. And we kind of like to take these breaks and do something different and challenge ourselves and challenge our crew and our actors. And we knew, bringing in Harriet Tubman, that we had to do something with Harriet Tubman. And it's like, how do you tell her entire life? You can't tell her entire life. And then we went, but she can tell her entire life. And when we start really researching too, one of the fascinating things about 1858, it's when Harriet became somewhat of a celebrity and started giving these talks to like-minded abolitionists to raise money for the cause. So then we just went, oh my God, a TED Talk in 1858. And then we're like, the whole episode? Are we gonna do the whole episode with her talking? And Joe and I just looked at each other and went, yeah, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it. And then you keep talking about it, you keep saying it, and then the network, you know, because we were so slammed, season 2 was shooting out of order and all this stuff. So it was actually the last episode we shot in the last 3 days of shooting. And we wrote it 2 weeks before. Wow. And we used to have a week and a half to memorize it. And it was just that kind of kismet where everybody showed up to play, and they were like, we're gonna make Harriet's legacy, honor it the way that it should be honored. And it's just, it was that thing too, when you were watching it, we're shooting it, it was going amazing, and people would come from the production office and they'd be like, can we just pop in? We heard this, like, something's amazing happening. But you don't know if that's going to translate to the screen necessarily. And then to watch it in editing and be like, oh, it's as great as it felt the day it was happening, oh my God. So we're very proud of that episode.
We'll talk a little bit about the writing of it, because I mean it's such a challenge to not only tell this woman's story in 50 minutes, but also to make it engrossing, right? I mean, you guys really do paint a picture of her life with these words, and it's something that's very theatrical. Can you talk a bit about, as you and Joe Pakowski were writing it, some of the challenges that presented you?
Well, we knew, you know, it's very daunting. The script turned out to be 42 pages of straight dialogue. And I remember Joe bought How to Write a One-Act Play book, and we didn't have time to read it. That's how quickly we had to write this. And I think that what's interesting is we have a script we called our blue line script. And it's where actual blue lines were actual words that Harriet said. Red lines were actual stories from her life. And all of it was blue, all of it was red. There was maybe one part that was black of the wildfire that we made up, that we were like, oh, she probably maybe saw a wildfire when she was a kid. And writing it, though, was just one of those things, again, where Joe and I we'd sit there and we'd be like, do. We went act by act, and we were like, we want to give each act its own feeling. And then, of course, you can't help but, like, write about the times when you're writing. So it was everything involved in Harriet's life, they felt very present, which is what led to that last one-take act in which she talks directly to the camera.
And when you gave the script to director Anthony Hemingway, who has directed most of your episodes, what was his reaction to getting this script with just straight dialogue for 40-some pages? You
know, Anthony's reaction which is why he's my creative soulmate, because his reaction was like, okay, let's do it. And that's what I love about him, and he attacks everything challenge, and he says, how do we elevate it even more? You know, even with the set, with the camera work, he was like, how do we get into this feeling? How do I make sure that we honor Harriet the way that we need to honor Harriet by not making this boring? And I think it's a testament to the camera work that he did in that episode too, where it just keeps moving. You're with her every second, and that feeling of not being afraid to sit on her. Like, a lot of people might be afraid to sit on her that much, but he really was like, nope, let's do these long takes. Let's get them. You know, every take we did a full act.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something. Of course, we have to talk about Aisha Hines, not just in regards to this episode, but I'm curious, when you were casting the role of Harriet Tubman, what made her right for it?
Well, Aisha's really good friends with Anthony, and I had been familiar with her, and we had been in kind of the same circles. And Anthony was like, Aisha's perfect for this. And I was like, I feel like she is. Oh my God, okay, great, have her come in. Because, when you're casting Harriet, you're like, who's gonna be able to be Harriet? And at that time, like, we had the feeling that we wanted to do the whole episode of her talking. So it's like, this person has to be able to grab us for 45, like TV audiences, short attention span. I've got a short attention span too. Like, you've got to keep us there. And she came in for the audition and she was fantastic. And then we cast her and she was fantastic. And that was the thing where you're just like I could watch Aisha all day. I'm like, wow, oh my God. It was great. And you feel it in episode 6 for sure. But you feel it even in, I think, that first episode when she's holding the gun and the axe on those guys.
Absolutely. You mentioned having planned out a lot of this stuff beforehand. I wonder, take us into the writer's room. How fluid are you guys to making new discoveries, even though you've plotted this out so thoroughly beforehand?
All new discoveries. We are best. Our writer's room is best idea wins. So if you come up with something amazing, we're like, yes, we're doing that. That's gonna be great. And I think having direction helps us do that, because we're saying, okay, we definitely want to always keep the story moving. We always want to move forward. But it's very key, and I think, going from first season to second season, to make sure we're not returning and just doing the same things over and over and trying to make up things to make things surprising, So it's always that, like, the surprise has to be organic. And I think because this was such a desperate and dangerous time, filled with such desperate and dangerous characters, I feel like there's always that surprise to mine.
Well, you're certainly seeing the characters develop in interesting ways. I think about Rosalie, for instance, mostly because I just talked to Jurnee not too long ago. So she's fresh on the mind. But I mean, for her, for instance, you see her becoming more proactive in her destiny, much more so than she was in the first season when we first met her as a shy house slave. Can you talk about some of the changes that these characters are going through this season?
Well, that's actually a perfectly good example of things that weren't planned that turned out to be kismet. Jurnee was pregnant this season, so we hadn't planned to go there with the character this season. We had planned to kind of make her Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 from Sarah Connor in Team 1. And then it's that thing where you realize, you're like, well, why are we, just because you're pregnant, we can still do that. And in fact, it turned out, episode 3 with her revenating, as we call it, through the woods, which is so amazing. You're like, oh my God, you're pregnant and you're on the run and this is crazy. And it's that, again, it's the joy of having actors who are ready to challenge themselves too, because Jurnee Smollett, I'm in awe of, like, what she did in that episode and what she did the entire season. And it's so interesting to watch and, watch the actors take the challenge and go forth, and the characters get to evolve and you get to challenge them. And again, they make us rise to the occasion.
Well, it is a happy accident because not only is it a big reveal at the end of that episode, but also it adds new conflicts to her character, as well as deepens her relationship with Aldis Hodge's character.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think it's about, we were like, well, okay, so this is happening. How do we integrate it in a way that feels fresh and feels new? And it was that thing of like, what if she's keeping it a secret? What if she's hiding it because she knows no one's going to allow her to do these things? And then the parallels of that to modern day, when people get pregnant and they have to go leave and all of work stuff that they talk about. I'm like, oh my God, this is so interesting. This is so amazing. And then, you get to do a Beyonce baby bump reveal at the end of 2, and that's not either.
You guys also aren't afraid of doing kind of bold, stylistic choices. I think about Ernestine's character, where she's ended up this season on that plantation that is very kind of almost out of a dream, if that makes sense.
We talked about from the start. We said we kind of wanted to be on a different plantation that feels different every season, to kind of dispel this monolith of slavery, which is that it's white columns and cotton fields. It's not all of that. And then to go to the Gullah Geechee area this season was also very timely, because right now a lot of the Gullah Geechees, they inherited their land and they kept it. and now it's being like stolen from them for condos and stuff. So it was great to kind of highlight that area and that culture, and the idea that there were people who kept their culture within this system.
Right.
And to do that, to kind of have these kind of apparitions show up and this different feel, like our production designer, Megan Rogers, is amazing. We're like, yeah, we're going to be in like 19 different locations this season and we have no money, so you can give us. And then she gives us this amazing stuff and you're just like, oh my God, thank you, Megan.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys also do a good job of at times keeping characters' motivations a secret. I think everyone's kind of wondering what Cato's been up to this season. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot about Cato 2.0, and it's part of the look of shaving the hair and the eyebrows. He's everything about him is so in his appearance. And we wanted to kind of give him a different, you know, we talked about paralleling Elizabeth's character with Cato's character, and they're both characters that move into darkness this season. And for him, you know, Cato has always been right for it. I think he's always been a tortured character. And I think some people respond to abuse by saying, I'm not ever going to be like that. And some people respond to abuse saying, I'm going to become the abuser. I want to be a bigger abuser than you because you abused me. And I think that that's a human feeling, and it's so interesting to be able to explore that and explore him going to London and seeing what the opposite is, which is, you know, there's some beautiful scenes with him and Rana Roy, who plays Devi, where you're just like, oh, Cato, just be your best self. Be your best self. But, you know?
Right, yeah.
Maybe in the end, Cato's best self is his evil self. There's that too.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because you guys are always kind of playing around with both sides of it. It makes it very compelling to watch, and I'm sure compelling to write.
And Alano Miller, you know, always shows up to play, which is always fun and exciting when because he can give you that vulnerability, but then he can pull it back and you can feel like, Cato, no, what are you doing?
I mean, the whole cast is fantastic. Aldis Hodge and Amirah Vann, Jessica de Gouw. I mean, Christopher Meloni. Working with this ensemble, what is that collaboration like?
It's fantastic. Again, it's what I was saying earlier. We know we can push the bar because they can push the bar. Like, there's nothing these actors cannot do, and we have been so blessed to have them play in our playground because they surprise us too. We'll be like, ooh, that'll be a like throwaway thing, and then they turn it into the most like poignant, heart-wrenching line that there is, and you're like, you just destroyed my life, what are you doing? And it's so fun to be able to write to that, to know that you could write an episode where Jurnee Smollett revenants 8 months pregnant through the woods because she can rise to that occasion, to know that with Ernestine, you can take her on this darker journey and really explore what it's like to be a Black woman in this time. With, you know, Jessica de Gouw, you know you can take her to this extremist place because she will go there and she will do it so fiercely. You're just like, I'm just watching you and I'm amazed. And then there's nothing Aldis Hodge cannot do. I'm still trying to find it because everything, you're just like, wow. Like in this last episode 9, his like fight with Rosalie, you're just like, oh my God, you're so good. It's great. It's fun to be able to play with that.
You guys have had almost an instantaneous success with audiences. You've got a very popular following. Why do you think the show had such an instant connection to people?
You know, I think it's that combination. It's genre, but with purpose. And I think that's, you know, what the difference is there's so much weight. Like, this is a heist movie, and we all love to watch that stuff. We all love genre. But then here's this layer that deepens this a bit. And I think that's what I always respond to when I love genre stuff. It's when genre is a metaphor for something underneath it, something real, something we're all attached to. And I feel like that's what our rabid fans that we love to tweet with every week are responding to, is that feeling of, oh, but yes, we had fun in that moment, but now this is hitting me in my heartstrings.
Absolutely. Well, Misha Green, thank you so much, and congratulations on season 2. I look forward to seeing more.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Bye.